Okay, today we're going to do the spiraling worksheet week number 3. So number 1 says, given the data set below, which of the following ordered pairs would not define f as a function? So remember, to be a function, my x's cannot repeat, and I'm looking for the one that would not define this as a function. So I'm looking for the one that would make my x's repeat. So if these are my x's right now, I have a -3, a 4, and a -1. If I use A, that's a +3. I'm not repeating, so that's not the one I want. If I do B, 5, again, I'm not repeating, so that's not the one I want. C is -4, again, not repeating any of my x values, but look at D. D is a -4, and is a +4, and if you look right here, I've used +4. So if I use this one, this will no longer be a function. So D would be the correct answer. Okay, number 2 says, which of the following is not a correct description of the function f of x equals -4x plus 2? Okay, so I think the easiest way to do this one is if we look on our calculators, and we're going to go to a new document. I never save anything, of course. And so I want to go to the graph, so that'd be number 2. And then I'm going to type in my equation, which was a -4x plus 2. And hit enter. Remember, if I see a graph, that's fine, but I don't really care about the graph. I'm trying to get to the table. So Control T will give me a table. Okay, so let's look at the questions. A says the graph the function contains the point -1, 6. So let me arrow up 2 times. There's -1, 6, so that's true. And when the value of x increases by 1 unit, the value of y increases by 4. So is that what's happening right here? As this is going up, I'm increasing by 1. Did I increase by 4 here? Increasing by 4. I went from 6 to 2. Am I increasing by 4? Looks like I'm decreasing by 4. So letter A says increasing by 4 units. So it looks like A is going to be my answer choice, because I'm looking for the one that's not a correct description. So it's not increasing, it's decreasing. So A was the correct answer. Okay, let's go on and do number 4. Number 3. Let me speed that up a little bit. It's asking, what is the domain of the graphed relation? Okay, so domain would be my x values. So if I'm looking for my x values, all I'm going to do is go from each number to the x-axis to see what that value would be. Because remember, this is a discrete graph, not a continuous. So that means it has individual points, which means my domain would also be individual points. So this one, the smallest one, is -5. The next one would be -2. The next one is a +2. And then we have a +4. And then a +6. Okay, on the next one, number 4, we are looking for x and y intercepts. So do we remember that if I'm looking for the x-intercept, remember the value of my y is always 0. So that means I'm going to have 4x minus 6 times 0 equals -36. And this entire thing right here, this is going to come out to be 0, correct? So that means we really just have 4x equals -36. If I divide by 4 on both sides, then I can get my x value, which would be a -9. So my x-intercept is going to be -9, 0. And then my y-intercept, I'll do it again, but of course I'm going to put the 0 in place of my x this time and solve for y. So that means I'm going to have 0, y. So in here I'll have 4 times 0 minus 6y equals -36. Again, all of this will come out to be 0. So that just leaves a -6y equals a -36. Again, Let's divide by negative 6 on both sides. So a negative 36 divided by a negative 6 will give me a positive 6. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, positive 6. Number 5 is asking for the rate of change. So we also know that to mean slope. So if I'm looking for the slope, that's just going to be the change in y over the change in x. So I can simply just look over here and say, well, my change in y, I went from negative 1 to negative 7, so an up 1. And then my change in x, I went from negative 6 to negative 3, so that was up 3. So my rate of change is going to be 1 over 3. Okay, number 6 is asking for the range for the graph, and remember range would be my y values. So I look at my lowest y value and then my highest y value. And this is a continuous graph, so I will be writing it with some inequality signs. So my lowest range value was negative 3, less than, because negative 3 is with the filled in circle, it's going to be equal to, my range is y, then it's less than, and my highest value is positive 5, and it is the line itself, so it also gets an equal to. Number 7 says, given the function f of x equals x squared plus 3, if the replacement set for the independent variable is 0, 3, 4, 7, what is the set for the dependent? So if this is independent is x, they're asking us to find it for dependent. Okay, so again, can we go to our calculator and just type this into the graphs and then compare my data table that we can pull up? So let me get the graph. Here we go. Okay, so if I want a new page, I'm going to do Control Doc to get a new page. Again, I want a graph, and I'm going to type in, it is x squared plus 3. Let's type that in, hit enter. Again, I'm not really concerned about the graph itself. I want to just get to the table. So Control T. So let's compare. It's asking us or telling us the first value for my independent variable is 0. So that means my, right here, that means my dependent is going to be 3. The next one was 3. So here was 0. The next one was 3. That means we have a 12. And let's go on down. The next one is going to be 4. Scoot up a little bit. Here we go. The next one is 4. That means my dependent is 19. And my next independent was 7. So my next dependent is going to be 52. Okay, so let me pull that back up. There we go. Okay, number 8 says, given the function f of x equals negative 4x plus 2, find the domain value when the range value is f of x equals 14. So I'm looking for the x given the y. So remember, this is our fancy way of saying y. So this is their fancy way of saying y equals 14. So I'm replacing my y with 14, and I'm going to have negative 4x plus 2 equals 14. So again, let's go to the calculator. I can take this and put it in InSolve. So let's go to Scratchpad. And I'm just going to type in, oh, remember we have to go to Menu, 3, and then 1 for InSolve. And then I'll type it exactly it. 14 equals negative 4x plus 2. Don't forget your comma x. And we end up with negative 3. So let me get my... There we go. So all of this came out to be x equals negative 3. Number 9 says write an equation of a line that passes through the following points. So again, let's try the calculator. Pull that up. So we want to go to a new document. And I'm not saving anything ever. Okay, I want to put a list or a spreadsheet, right? So I'm going to do number 4. And remember, x goes where A is, y goes where B is. I type in my x values, which negative 4 and a positive 8. and then arrow over. For my y values, I'll have -8 and a -2. Once I'm there, I'm going to go to menu, and then 4, and then 1, and then remember it's linear regression, mx plus b, so 3. X goes in the X list, Y goes in the Y list. I hit enter, and there is my slope is 0.5, and my y-intercept is -6. So let me pull up my, here we go. So it was y equals, my slope was 0.5 or 1/2. And my y-intercept was -6, right? So I have y equals 1/2 x minus 6. Number 10 says, when y varies directly with x and y equals 48 when x equals 30, find x when y equals 312. So we talked about this last week. Varies directly just means we're setting up or we're doing a proportion. So on this we are comparing y to x. So let's just fill in. When y is 48, x is 30. So it says find x when y is 312. So now that it's there, I can either do cross multiplying, or I could plug this into InSolve. It doesn't matter to me. I kind of like using my calculator, so let's go to the calculator. So again, I'm going to go to Scratchpad. So let me go here. Let me go to A. Okay, so if I do InSolve, that was menu 3, 1. I have to do a fraction, and it's 48 over 30 equals another fraction, so control division, 312 over x, and then comma x. So my x is going to come out to be 195. So let's write that. So x would equal 195. Okay, number 11 says, given the formula V equals LWH, solve for W. Okay, so all that means is that I need the W to be by itself. So that means this needs to stay. Everything on this side with the W needs to go to the other side. Because this is multiplication, L times W times H. The opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I'm dividing by the L and the H. I do it on both sides. So on the right hand side, these cancel and it leaves my W. On the left hand side, I don't have any variables that are the same, so it's just going to stay right there. So my W is going to be V over LH. 12 says, write the equation in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form looks like this, just to remind you. Basically, that just means y is by itself. So in this case, I need to get rid of my 5 first. So I do the opposite, which means I'm subtracting 5 from both sides. So I have 3x minus 7 equals 4y. And now I'm going to divide everything by 4. So if I want to turn that around so I get the y on this side, so I'm going to have, the 4's are canceling, I have my y. Then I have 3 divided by 4x, 3 divided by 4x, and then minus 7 over 4. Neither one of those fractions will reduce, so there would be my answer.